Today we've got a crazy revenge story about eating raw chicken. We'll get into that in a bit, but first, tricking my slacker coworker into sabotaging himself. I work in an office with a guy I'll call Seth. Seth is a coworker that everyone knows. Lazy, always passing his work onto someone else, and somehow always getting away with it. He'll sit around on his phone or go to the bathroom every 10 minutes. He's the kind of guy who will show up late, make some lame excuse about traffic, and then disappear for lunch for 2 hours. For the past 6 months, Seth's favorite target has been me. He'll send emails asking if I can help out with a project, but what he really means is do all the work while I take the credit. I complained to my boss a couple of times, but somehow Seth always managed to weasel his way out of trouble. The final straw came when he passed off a major report that was due to a client in 2 days, dumping it on me last minute. One day, I casually asked him if he was good with Excel, and he admitted he didn't know much about it. Perfect. The next time Seth tried to dump a bunch of spreadsheets on me to organize for his next report, I agreed. But this time, I embedded a series of hidden formulas into the documents. These formulas didn't do anything important, just enough to mess with the numbers if someone didn't know how to check for hidden cells. It took me a little time, but I was careful not to make it too obvious. The kicker? Every time Seth tried to copy and paste the data into his report, it would scramble everything just enough to be completely useless. On the day the report was due, Seth slacked off like usual, assuming I had handled it like always. When the client called, furious because the report was filled with nonsense numbers, Seth panicked. He rushed to fix it, but every time he tried to fix one part of the report, something else would break. He came to me frantic and asked for help. I acted confused and said, "Oh, I don't know what happened. Maybe it's a glitch." I gave him some vague advice and watched as he spent the entire day trying to salvage his mess. Our boss found out, and for once, Seth couldn't talk his way out of it. He got lambasted for screwing up such an important project and was put on temporary leave without pay. I guess he'll be doing his own work from now on. I mean, I hear this story and I'm just wondering why OP put up with it so long. Like, why were they enabling this kind of behavior? It's like next level selfish just to get your work assignment and then just hand it off to somebody else going, "Can't wait to see what you do with it." Medic Jambi commented, "Perhaps every time you're asked, shoot your manager an email saying that you're happy to help. But you're asking the manager what other projects he or she wants you to delay to work on your coworker's project." Goober McNutley commented, "This is the way. Every time new work comes in, ask what else needs to give. Even better when it's for another group or boss, make them do the reprioritization. Refuse to let them set top priority for everything too. When everything is important, nothing is important." Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you guys enjoy awesome stories of revenge, it would be amazing if you left a like or left a review if you're listening to my podcast. Our next story is, I was a crappy customer to our crappy customer. I used to work a customer service job at a dispensary. We had this one customer who was just a cranky, miserable woman. She'd come in acting all sweet, say hi to us all, ask for her product, and then the show would begin. Here's an example of how these transactions typically went. "This isn't what I ordered. Go get what I ordered." The employee said, "Ma'am, you specifically requested this eighth. You said you wanted 3.5 grams of Brownie Scout." She replies, "No, I said I wanted the pineapple gummies. Go get them now." We would go get the thing she said she wanted. She'd complain about lazy employees, be all smiles again, and then she would pay and leave. And be right back in the store a half hour later with any excuse she could think of. The package was open when she got it. The edibles melted together. There was a hair in her jar. The packaging smelled like chlorine. Any stupid excuse she could pull from her butt looking for a refund or store credit, she would try and use it. Every single time she came in, this is how it went. But then one day I went to a gas station to fill up my car while I was in the next town over. And wouldn't you be danged, she was a cashier at the gas station. So I of course asked for a pack of Marlboro 100s. She grabbed the pack and I said, "That's not what I asked for. I asked for the Camels." She grabbed the Camels. That's not what I wanted. I wanted the Newports." She sighed and grabbed the Newports. "What are you doing? I'm just in here to pay for my gas." The long stare she gave me was almost enough to make me regret starting crap, but she knew as an employee she could get in real trouble if she snapped, so she forced a smile, put my cash in the register, and I went on my merry way. But I wasn't done. I came right back in 5 minutes later. I looked at her and said, "Excuse me, I only spent X amount on gas, but you took all of my money. Where's my change?" She is obviously super ticked off at this point, but what was she gonna do about it? That's freaking right, absolutely nothing. So she tries very hard and fails to politely explain to me that the gas cost the amount I had given her and she couldn't give me the difference. So in a voice that almost sounded exactly like hers, I complained about lazy employees, smiled sweetly, said goodbye, and walked out, just like she does. She didn't learn her lesson for a while, came back in a few times with her same old routine. Then I recruited a coworker and we both went back to that gas station separately a few times and did our new routine. After trying and failing to file a complaint, she stopped coming in entirely and the balance was finally restored. I don't work at the dispensary anymore, but traumatizing her the way she did my coworkers and I still makes me smile years later. Honestly, I think the least surprising thing is a person like that getting something from a dispensary. Honestly, she seems like the kind of person that definitely needs something that could potentially mellow her out a little bit. Clever Girl 2013 commented, "That is the best way to deal with people like that. How could she be so bad when she works in customer service herself?" OP responded saying, "You'd think she'd have a little more self-awareness, especially since her incessant bickering and whining would mean she could be at the register anywhere between 5 to 15 minutes. On our short-staffed days, we'd begin sweating while she whined because we had to idly stand by and suffer in silence as we watched the queue get bigger and not moving along at all." This next story is never fire the last legacy knowledge guy. Early in my career, I worked in the legal/contracts department for a software company that produced Middleman SaaS solution, Midsoft Inc. Think software that is licensed by large companies and also licensed by small companies or independent owner-operator businesses. Said software allows the small businesses to interface their more modern business software with the back-end Pascal, Fortran, COBOL interfaces that are still used by multiple large companies. Not very many companies compete with Midsoft Inc. because, well, Pascal, Fortran, COBOL, you get the idea. To be fair to Midsoft Inc., their product was pretty good and made life pretty easy for both the small companies and the large companies. For the low cost of money. The main way that Midsoft Inc. drove growth was by going to a large company and getting them set up on the software interface. Then, that company would recognize the cost savings and simplicity of only having one vendor handle all communications with their partner/customer businesses, and they would mandate usage of Midsoft Inc. interface to the smaller companies. Midsoft Inc. works hard on one big sale, anywhere from $5 to $15 million a year ACV, and then gets an additional 2,000 to 4,000 customers on the small business connector at $1,000 a month. The biggest challenge after the big sale is doing the initial integration with a large customer. Why? Well, because they're primarily using Pascal, Fortran, COBOL. Okay, so let's get into the ProRevenge part of our story. Midsoft Inc. was owned by private equity, and like private equity does, they wanted to maximize profits. So, illegal or not, they went through and found the most highly paid developers in the company and began to force them out. In this case, highly paid equals years of service with the company equals legacy knowledge. In a matter of months, they let go around a dozen extra super senior developers, both in atomic age and tenure. If I recall correctly, the guy with the least tenure at the company was greater than 35 years. Beyond this group, there was a chasm down to the next group of 10 to 15 year tenure guys. For every one of these layoffs, those that knew objected fiercely, as the tribal knowledge that was being lost was irreplaceable and the monetary savings to the company was negligible. 12 developers who were making around $200,000 each at the time, plus overhead costs, equal around $3.5 million a year at a nearly $1 billion a year business. Enter Giant Dong Sam, GDS. His reference will make sense shortly. GDS was the last man on the island. He was finishing up a project and was told that his time was wrapping up. Despite the objections of senior engineering leadership, senior sales leadership, and senior legal leadership, my boss, the decision was made. GDS was in his early 60s and was able to comfortably retire but was not ready to do so. He was understandably upset at the news that he would be let go at the end of his project. But as the consummate professional, he completed his work before being given a going-away party appropriate for someone who was well-liked by everyone at the company for decades. It had been around 3 weeks since GDS had been let go, and Midsoft Inc. closed the largest deal in company history. It was a 3+ year sales cycle, but this deal was for $25 million a year with a 5-year term, plus a software mandate to almost 10,000 connected small businesses. The integration team got the assignment to get started and had only a few months to build the integration and get it shipped before end of year so that the revenue could get booked. Read, so the execs could get their fat bonus for hitting and exceeding numbers. Cool. Who was going to head the integration into the customer's 40+ year-old mainframe environment? If you answered, one of the 12 guys that they fired over the previous 6 months, but most specifically Giant Dong Sam, you'd be right, because there was nobody left at the company who knew how to build the integration. Cue war room meetings with HR, legal, senior leadership, and frantic phone calls to GDS with escalating offers to rehire him. The last offer that passed through my desk was at $350,000 a year, plus back pay for the time since he was laid off, plus resumption of his tenure and benefits, plus remote work whenever he wanted. This was way before that was commonplace. GDS quickly rejected every offer until the company just decided to turn and grovel and ask him exactly what it would take to get him back. Well, ladies and gentlemen of ProRevenge, as the person who was ultimately responsible in the legal department to interface with HR and implement GDS's new contract in the system, I can tell you precisely what it took to get GDS back at Midsoft Inc. After a brief negotiation with GDS's son, who happened to be an attorney and reminded the company that this deal that they had announced publicly was in real jeopardy without an integration leader, he came back as a 1099 consultant. His hourly rate was $1,000 an hour. He was guaranteed a minimum of 80 hours a month. The initial term lasted for 36 months. The contract had automatic renewals for 12 more months after the initial term. The company had to give him 9 months' notice to cancel the automatic renewal. The contract stated that he was responsible for development and documentation of client engagements. He would not provide training of his replacements. In the end, his nearly $1 million a year consulting fees didn't make a dent in the company's bottom line, and allowed them to continue selling massive deals so that execs could buy their third homes in Big Sky, Wyoming. But Giant Dong Sam most certainly got his pro-level revenge for being fired. I hadn't thought about the story for a while, so I looked up Sam on Facebook. He seems to still be alive and appears to be in decent health for his age, so good on him. Isn't it sad to hear these absolutely ludicrous sounding numbers and realizing this company is so big, they could just go, okay, yeah, we'll do that, and act like almost like nothing is wrong with that, when they could have just maintained the status quo, wouldn't have affected the company, and they wouldn't have had this whole panic period. EJR Honda 79 commented, good for GDS, well played. I've seen this happen with increasing frequency over the last few years. Private equity firm buys the company and then systematically sucks all the value out of the company until things hit a tipping point. Then, long-fired employees with the tribal knowledge are brought back on their own terms. Private equity firm ends up eating into their profits to pay for the mistake of letting knowledgeable people go. The worst part is it will keep happening because private equity firms will never learn. Worse, this lesson will never be taught in MBA schools. RyGuy24 commented, the PE firms typically make money either way because they've borrowed the money to buy the company, but the first thing they do is offload the debt to the company they bought. So they won't own a dime if it goes under, and they keep whatever consulting fees they already extracted from the company. It's why private equity's version of leveraged buyouts should be illegal. Our next story is, I didn't even leave him a fork. My brother is 53 and has lived off of our parents his whole life. He's never bought his own car or paid his own rent. He's never even paid his own child support. Our mom died a couple of years ago and his behavior really spiraled. He had always been a violent drunk, and after her death, he was always drunk. He also became more and more abusive to our dad. When he was finally arrested, I was able to step in and take care of Dad for the last 5 months of his life. I had tried before, but the fog of abuse was too dense, and my dad couldn't admit his son had betrayed him like that. Over the months, my dad shook free of that fog and wanted me to throw everything of my brother's away. He wanted him to get nothing from him ever again. I didn't toss his stuff. I just put it in a storage building. Dad changed his will to leave the land to my nephew, brother's 10-year-old son, and everything else divided between bro and me. I thought. After he died, I found out that the land was deeded to nephew and everything else went to me. All of the physical possessions that were not the land or mobile home. 20 minutes after my brother found out about Dad's death, he showed up to throw me out of the trailer. He also tried to get into the bank and change the funeral so he could get the death certificate. The lawyer told me I did have to get out, but I was okay to take everything and move it into storage if I chose to. So, I did. Our cousins were happy to help. My kids and husband also joined in, and in 4 days we were able to get 99.99% of the stuff moved out. Dad didn't want bro to have anything, and I left him nothing. Not even a fork. I turned off the power, the water, the trash, and the internet. His car will be repossessed if he can't get it refinanced, and he'll lose the trailer if he doesn't get a mortgage to cover what's owed. He works 2 to 3 days a week making pizza, so the banks may be reluctant. I have a ton of stuff I don't need in 2 giant storage units, but my real inheritance is knowing that I get to watch my brother figure out how to grow up at 53. I had one thought pop into my head as I was reading this, and EgalGus45 commented on it perfectly, pointing out, brother's 10-year-old son got land and trailer. Not a good move, as brother will now no doubt have control as parent or guardian of the minor nephew. So the brother got something, right? Our next story is, what's the pettiest thing you've ever done after a breakup? I'll go first. My ex ditched me in a foreign country after getting belligerently drunk on the flight there. I decided to make the most of the trip and continued on without him. Then he got arrested at the airport before boarding for having an illegal substance on him. I continued home, packed all of his belongings that were at my house, nicely bagged them in his car that was in my driveway, then called a tow truck. Had it towed to the dealership he bought the car from and told them he had been arrested in Africa and probably would miss some payments. Never talked to him again despite his many attempts. Feel blessed I dodged that bullet. Also, something to note, I met my husband of 4 years on that trip and he's my angel. Happier than I ever thought was possible. How many people who are currently in a relationship could have their partner do this to them and get arrested, go off belligerently drunk in a foreign country, and end up still together as a couple on the flight back home? Even if it's been like a long-term committed relationship, I'd be very curious. Merlot120 commented, not my breakup, but my daughter's breakup. Her ex threatened to keep the kids after a visitation one weekend and she was scared and upset. I told her he didn't want them full time. He worked out of town and he was big on going to the bar and drinking. I insisted she go camping out of cell phone reach for a couple of days. The next day he was calling me and demanding that I take the kids so he could get to work. He had to leave that night. I refused. After a couple of days I did take them, but he missed a week of work. And he never did it again. Our next story is, not 100% sure if this goes here, but I shocked a German couple by understanding German. I took German for 1 year in high school and did terribly. I was later stationed in Germany in the mid-1990s while in the US Navy. I didn't learn a whole lot of German while there, as my friends fell into one of 3 categories. 1. American military personnel. 2. German college students studying English. Or 3. English construction workers. I picked up some German, enough to get a seat at a beer garden and order food and a few other small phrases. Fast forward around 2010, and I'm headed to Las Vegas from San Diego for a convention. Whenever I went somewhere solo, I took one of the kids' small stuffed animals so I could send them pictures of our adventures. While in Vegas, I went to the Valley of Fire State Park. The place is amazing. Several thousand-year-old petroglyphs adorn the cliff walls. Lots of wind-worn sandstone with holes and small caverns. I was near the visitor center with Sad Face, a small stuffed basset hound, climbing up the sandstone to put him in a small hole. An older German couple walked by and said the equivalent of, "Look at this idiot with his toy." So I did my best to reply in German, "Thank you, this is for my kids." I must have gotten my message across as they quickly apologized and increased their speed of walking. I just think even if OP didn't get it exactly right, there is the sense of they understood exactly what we said, and yeah, we now look like huge freaking jerks. At least they have some sense of shame. Phil8list commented, "I was about 15 months old. My mother was pregnant with my brother and also watching the child of a family friend who was about my age. That woman had just popped into a store for something. My mom was a German immigrant, as was her friend. A German couple waiting for the bus apparently decided that my mother warranted some negative comments. Look at her. These disgusting French breed like rabbits." Just then, the other woman arrived and my mother greeted her cheerily in German, much to her surprise as she was trying to learn French. My mother smiled at the people as she walked by and said, "We are off to get carrots." Our next story is, call her too old and she'd embarrass the crap out of you. My late great aunt was amazing. She was 99 when she died. I absolutely and still do adore her. She was tiny too. She was 2 inches taller than my mom, so 4'7". She never got married and told me why. She said that back in her day, men considered women property. Her parents were different. They had a loving relationship and considered each other equals. She wanted what they had, but never found it. She got their house after they passed. My mom thought that she was still a virgin in her old age, and when I asked my great aunt, she laughed and said, "No, I still go out to the local bar every Friday and bring home a man." She was going to tell me more, but my dad told her I was too young to hear it. She told him that I could hear it since I was 18 years old. He informed her that he couldn't hear it without becoming sick. His face was pretty red and he was gagging. I just about nearly died laughing. He made a really bad mistake when he snapped at her and said, "You are too old to be having sex." She went silent for a moment, then got really angry and narrowed her eyes at him. My dad was mean and would have never have been scared of a woman, especially a tiny one, but I saw him lose color as she stepped close, looked up and wagged her finger at him with all sorts of threats to certain important body parts, before she walked angrily away. In all of her time babysitting all her nieces and nephews and great-nieces and nephews, she had never laid a hand on any of the kids. She didn't believe in spankings, and yet every kid, including Dad, always obeyed her and feared her if they broke her rules. Dad was very uneasy, and it became clear why later on. She was storing some things and she needed help moving some of the boxes to a different room. She told me to watch what she did next. She purposely left the bottom of a certain box weak and told Dad that she needed him to move it for her. When he picked it up, the bottom gave way and out came all sorts of sex toys. Dad's face went completely red and then she yelled, "Well, now I have to wash them." Oh my God, the look of shock, embarrassment, and violent gagging had him fleeing from the room and straight to the bathroom. I literally fell on the floor laughing. I still laugh about that day and I still miss her. Well, not only was she a confident and strong woman, she sounds like the kind of person who knew what they wanted. Baxu2 commented, "The fact that she had a box full of them on hand? I aim to be as spicy as your late great, very great aunt in my later years." Jinxie McGee commented, "My aunt was 80 when she died. My uncle was still alive but had Alzheimer's. They didn't have children. My aunt was a firecracker and she could dish it out, but she could take it. I loved her like a second mom. They were there for me always, before and after my parents' deaths. On her deathbed at home, she asked to speak to me alone. We all got the chance for personal goodbyes. However, my goodbye included clearing out their bedside table. My aunt had gathered the items that some of her very conservative relatives would not approve of. Toys, etc., her weed accessories, spicy photos of her, etc. Oh, and a reversible X-rated puzzle from the 1970s. They were together from when they were 14 and 16. They were the fun ones. I felt honored. she saw that I was a fun one too. Our next story is Pettiness at the Ferrari Museum. A lovely commenter suggested this for here. Today I was lucky enough to visit Museum Ferrari Maranello. Cars aren't really my thing, but my aunt did not want to go alone. Many cars, many photos, not too crowded. Generally people being polite and not stepping into photos being taken. All very respectful. Until the last car. Didn't seem a particularly special one compared to how others were displayed. I'm politely standing next to an older lady taking a photo of her husband next to the car. Behind him and facing the other direction, my aunt. I'm about to alert her when he loudly says in French, "I don't want the fat cow in my photo." Well, guess who speaks French? I marched over, planted myself right behind him and started reading every display on the walls. Eventually, he braved asking me to move. I smiled politely and stated in French, "No thank you," and kept reading. Eventually, people were staring. It was a standoff. And when one woman, politely, not staff, alerted me, I calmly stated, "Oh, I'm aware." He called my aunt a fat cow. A few people chuckled and entered the frame. I'm stubborn to a fault, so I was quite happy to wait him out, reading away. Eventually, they huffed off. As soon as they left the room, I moved for everyone else to take photos. My aunt found it funny, and if he'd only asked, she would have happily moved. She was unaware and doesn't speak French. I hope that old butt gets diarrhea for the rest of his holiday. I really do very much enjoy these kinds of stories, the ones where people just don't expect the people to speak their language, say some crazy out-of-pocket thing, and then are just completely blown away when the person, surprise, knows that language. It's one of those inward-looking, "oh god, I am really a jerk, aren't I?" moments. At least if, like I mentioned earlier, they have any shame. Noel JB commented, "My dad took my mom to Paris. While sitting at a bar/restaurant, two French gentlemen were in general bad-mouthing America. Dad pretty much took it in stride because it was just general babble, until one said how America was settled by the scourge of Europe when prisoners were let out of prison if they would marry a prostitute and move to America. My dad turned around and told them in French, "It may be true America was settled by the scourge of Europe, but if it was not for America, you would be speaking German twice." Our next story is, eat your own dang popcorn. I dated this guy years ago that had this nasty habit of eating my food. I'd be making a sandwich, offer to make him one, he would decline, and then ask me for a bite and eat most of it. I'd end up making another, sandwich, bowl of ice cream, didn't matter. He would reach across the table and take food off my plate. It was annoying as heck. One night I was making popcorn and offered to make him some. Nope, I'm good. I knew what was going to happen. I put a ton of cayenne pepper all over it. I love hot food, so it was no skin off my teeth. Sure as crap, he plunges his hand into the bowl as soon as I sit down and throws a big handful into his mouth. He started to cough, his face turned beet red, tears ran down his face, he could barely speak. I started to laugh. It was the gift that kept on giving. He rubbed the tears from his eyes, the snot from his nose, and then moaned in pain. He raced to the bathroom to rinse out his eyes and wash his hands and face. He looked like a drowned rat with a cold when he came out. Found out I love cayenne on my popcorn. Yeah, bad move. I mean, when your eyes start watering like that when you eat something spicy, you do have that instinct to just go and rub your eyes and kind of wipe the tears away. You gotta have some consideration of the moment, but this guy doesn't seem to have too much of a history of being considerate. ShayB123 commented, he would have a scar from my fork being embedded in the hand he reached out with. OneSatisfaction8676 commented, my daughter did that to my father. He kept eating off her plate at the dinner table even after everyone asking him to stop multiple times. There was plenty of food left on the serving table, he was just being a butt. He reached over one time too many and my 9-year-old stuck her fork in the back of his hand. Dad got mad when I refused to do anything. I just told him that it looked like the child at the table learned a lesson. He never ate from her plate again. Our next story is, stop eating when the cook says so, or he might just feed you raw chicken. This happened yesterday. I'm the younger sibling in the family and we had a small get-together at home. I took up the role of barbecuing chicken for everyone, which I really enjoy. My older sister, who's married, was also there. While I was barbecuing, I noticed the plate wasn't filling up because she kept swooping in and eating the chicken before I could even get it to the table. I was mildly annoyed. I asked her to stop because there wasn't much chicken and everyone needed to eat. but it was like I was talking to a wall. She brushed me off and said, "I'm helping by tasting the food," as if that justified it. So cue a little petty revenge. I decided to make the next batch of chicken look perfect on the outside, but left it raw on the inside. My sister, like clockwork, swooped in again and took a bite without checking. The second she did, she knew it was raw and immediately spat it out and rushed off to wash her mouth. Everyone else at the get-together was laughing, but my sister? She didn't eat any more chicken for the rest of the night. I think I know some people personally that if you did that to them, they may swear off chicken for like months, not just for the rest of the night. And to be fair, I am a person that loves chicken, so maybe something like this would pop into my mind of wanting to do it, but I would never go and just steal all this food before it even got served. Nola Elro commented, "Unless your family starved her when she was little and now she has an eating disorder to eat as much as she can, as fast as possible, she's just selfish and deserved that." But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another absolutely crazy revenge story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.